Welcome to the Chicago Home Partner Podcast. I'm Amanda McMillan. Along with my co-host Samuel Shahan, we discuss the Chicago real estate market. Our goal is to educate you on what's actually happening out there and how it impacts your real estate goals.
It's a whey protein bar, so it's like clunky.
And we're back.
For a special edition.
Special edition.
Love
this is the one I get a little bit nervous about. This is like we're on the chopping block.
Yes. So every year we make predictions about how the market is going to handle for the year in the future. Again, we're not crystal ball people. We're not fortune tellers. We didn't read tarot cards. We have no idea what we're doing, but we make our predictions.
I'd like to make an edit on that comment. I'd like to think we do know what we're doing.
We do, yes.
But we can't
know what
foresee
we're doing,
future.
but we can't foresee the future.
For certain. Okay, so Samuel is 100% correct. This is our 2022/2023 market report.
Yes.
How many times am I going to butcher the years? What we're going to do today is we're going to start with what our predictions were for 2022.
Yep.
The ink is dry. We're into the next realm. We can see how we did. It was a year that, much like the previous years, had a lot more things thrown at us that were a little different. So we're going to see how we did on that
totally
front. We're also then going to take it to the next level and put our predictions out there for the next year. So should be interesting if nothing else.
And to preface, we last year did talk about that everything was going to be great unless big items happened or big world issues came up.
Sure.
Nobody was expecting the Ukrainian war this year. Nobody was expecting inflation to increase as much as it did. So
there were a lot of wild cards.
Yeah.
We are getting to be experts in the wild cards, but yeah, there were definitely a lot of wild cards. So let's set some parameters.
Totally.
First and foremost, we're talking about Chicago real estate, and we're talking about the real estate that most of our business is in. So we're going to basically take from the Loop all the way up north to Rogers Park, as far west as I would say about Edison Park, and kind of everything in between there from the kind of, if you use those as rough boundaries.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at the data in a few different measurements.
Which is a lot of different types of properties too. So, I mean, unfortunately, we can't really break down everything. We can't break it down into, we could break it down into single family homes and condos, but we can't break it into single families. We can't break it down to townhomes. We can't high rises versus low rises. There are just so many different types of products in the market that we deal with.
Totally. And that's, I think one of the greatest things to note, right? This is very surface level. We are happy to have this conversation with people about their specific properties so that we can really get as local and specific as possible. Real estate is local.
Very, very local.
Okay. So on that front, let's dive in and let's get started.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I'll take this one. I'll go with it. Average sales price.
Okay.
Here was our prediction.
This is always the fun one. This is what people always want to
People are
hear
excited.
about.
So
they're always
about
excited.
what they're excited about.
What is my house worth?
So at the beginning of 2022, we stated that home prices in the Chicagoland area should see a decent but stable increase over the previous year.
Yep.
Okay. That's what we stated, is that we were going to see decent but stable. So meaning it wasn't going to be nuts, it wasn't going to be crazy, but we were going to see some more increase over what we had seen in prices were going to go up.
So it's not like the other markets where they're seeing 40, 50, 60% appreciation.
Exactly.
We were going to be very stable, which is why we love to call it the little engine that could.
The little engine that could.
The
we
little
keep
mini
chugging
roller coaster.
Along. Okay. So in terms of our metrics, when we took a look at the sales prices averages, we saw that the north, downtown, northwest, west sides that we cover saw an increase of 3%.
In the median price.
No, this is the average.
Oh, the average. Okay,
The average.
cool.
This is the average.
Okay.
So the average price of those types of properties, all the different properties in there saw a 3% increase.
Okay.
That's
That's very mild.
that is sustainable.
Yes.
That is normal. That is, maybe a little light from, when we said decent, in my mind, that maybe was a little bit more. We saw the increase, but it was very.
So when we talk about the average over the year, there's two different ways that we can calculate it, right? And that's where a lot of the media kind of takes it into play as well, which is what we always talk about. there's year over year, which is comparing month to month. But then this, we're taking the average over the total 12 months compared to the previous 12 months and seeing what the actual appreciation is. Because there's going to be ups and downs throughout that entire year.
For certain. Absolutely 100%. Okay, now if I take this and look at it in two different directions. Downtown.
Yep.
Right? Loop, River North. I think Old Town kind of sneaks in there too.
Yep.
Those a little bit more urban markets we've talked about. There's such a different pulse to that market right now. Mm-hmm. Those markets actually saw a very, very slight decline in valuations, down 1%. Now, anybody that's had a valuation conversation with me, they've heard me say that kind of up or down 1 to 2% in my mind is a flat market, right?
Totally.
We've got to take statistics with a grain of salt. So in my mind, to see something down negative 1%, that's a flat market with maybe a slight negative emphasis. Mm-hmm. But so the downtown saw a little bit of softening in that front. Meanwhile, the other neighborhoods, the urban neighborhoods, as we talked about, actually saw the averages grow 4%. Oh. So the reason it came down a little bit, that overall average was because of that. So the urban neighborhoods said 4%. Once again, super sustainable. And that's, once again, one of the things that gives us a lot of confidence as we kind of navigate some of these waters.
Yeah. It helps with our affordability as well.
It does help with our affordability. Totally.
All right. So the next one, our next prediction was talking about inventory. So this is properties that are on the market.
The homes available for people.
Homes available.
The buzzword of the last 3 years.
So remember, going in 2021, we had very, very low inventory. So coming into 2022, we actually predicted that we would see a little bit of an increase in inventory. And unfortunately, we got that really wrong. This was one prediction that we not only got wrong, we got really wrong. We got really wrong. So obviously home inventory went down 27% this year. And that's including the downtown market. Okay. And even when you split it up, both of them are the actual same, which is very odd, which is different than what we talk about with other markets. That was a very interesting statistic. Usually we see it a little bit more lopsided, but our downtown, our urban neighborhoods, everything was down 27%. Yeah. So, I mean, we unfortunately kind of butchered that one, but hopefully. I mean, but important to talk about why, right? We were really thrown off in this, and this is so much of why this year took on the dynamic that it did. Totally. We came into this year not expecting a ton, but expecting more, and this is where we had the issues with the labor shortages, supply chain, so many of those things happening. We had still what I call, people not willing to commit to decisions to do things because they don't know what their companies are doing. There was still the COVID confusion, as I said. Totally. Companies that were bringing people in, maybe not. Just a lot of things were impacting our market, so we weren't getting as many homes on the market. I would say the biggest pressure on that, in my opinion, you might think differently, was the war overseas. The war overseas impacted our labor and our supply chain in ways that we couldn't have understood or predicted in the future. Oh, totally. Which is why we saw rampant inflation this year, like just starting off and just everything. Well, and I think that's a really important thing to note. I think there's oftentimes that we feel, United States of America, we're very isolated. We're this big superpower, but it's interesting to see how something overseas had such a dramatic impact on our markets. And that's not just the real estate markets, the financial markets, the labor markets, all of that. Yeah. We saw a huge impact from that. So I think it if anything, hopefully brought a little bit more of world awareness to what we do. Yes. I agree. Okay, so the valuation aspect we were right on. The inventory we were not right on. Right, we were off on that for certain. We'll eat a little bit of humble pie on that. We understand why. Yeah. Right, we got sucker punched, and that totally happens. Okay, here's another one that I'm going to say we weren't wrong, but we weren't right. We were vaguely right. Interest rates. Interest rates have been a topic of conversation, which has had such a dramatic impact on what we do. We came in, our prediction, if we're going to put out our 2022 prediction, our prediction was that interest rates should increase a couple of times over the year. Yes. We weren't wrong. It increased a couple times over the year. And then a couple more, and then a couple more, and then a couple more. Well, so we thought it would just go a little bit, like the increments would be smaller. So instead of 75 basis point jumps, we thought there would be 25 basis point jumps. So, I mean, like, it's not off. It's just, we just weren't expecting that we had to compete against inflation so much.
We didn't understand the severity of it.
Yeah.
You know, and in hindsight, as we've said before, in hindsight, it's really easy for us to sit here and say, hey, the government should have done this, this, and this at this time and this time. Obviously, in hindsight, I think everybody knows that kind of attacking the inflation issue should have happened in 2021. There was still a lot of fear in that market. There was still a lot of things happening. So the decision got kind of punted, postponed.
Yep.
And because of that, we started dealing with it maybe a little late. And so it had to be more severe. It's you know, we understand what it is. So obviously interest rates when we came into the year were hovering in the low to mid threes.
Yep.
Luckily, they've actually come down a little bit. What we peaked
around 7.1.
We peaked just over 7%, which was It's not that it's a unrealistic interest rate. It was a huge growth, right? It was the interest rates over doubled.
Totally.
Now, as expected, that initial impact they're starting to come down. I think we locked in somebody earlier this week. Just over 6%.
Yep.
We had somebody at 6.05 that actually locked in yesterday. I've seen a couple at 6.3. Yeah, depending what it is, condo, single family, those types of things,
totally.
ARMs.
Credits, everything.
But that was something that, once again, we weren't wrong, but we weren't right. It had a huge impact on our market, though, from that perspective. And because the interest rate is something that we've just talked about ad nauseum in the sense that we're marrying the property, dating the rate.
Well, I think it also had the effect of why like transactions were down and everything like that. Because when we hit our normal seasonality, that was coupled with the interest rates. Yeah. So it almost was kind of like a double slap in that moment. We obviously got over it a little bit. And so it was just a shocker. The
first major hike happened right after Memorial Day weekend. So we had a huge seasonality aspect because we always see, right? When the weather gets good, when people start getting distracted, summertime is always a little quieter for us. So we had that kind of double whammy that Memorial Day weekend, the weather was fantastic. People were distracted. They had great weekends away. They came back. Interest rates took the largest hike.
The largest jump because they had gone up a little bit before it.
But they saw the biggest increase in 30 years.
That's when we were like, this is not normal.
Right? Biggest increase in 30 years. And then obviously people were a little stunned. And for 10 days, we were quiet.
Yeah, we were like,
and then people started to absorb it a little bit more and we kind of navigated through there. So the interest rates had played a huge role in our marketplace this year. You know, we're going to obviously talk about kind of our thought process on what happens from here. But overall, we thought they were going to go up a couple of times. They absolutely did. They went up a few more times than that. And I would absolutely say that we were, I don't know, that's a B for us.
Totally. And we're not mortgage brokers. That's the other thing. So like the mortgage brokers know about the interest rates, again, talking about, but even talking about, like locking in, right? I've had a couple conversations with clients lately of, hey, let's lock in. So just in case something happens, but my lender has been like, don't do it. It's going to go down. We're seeing this. Yeah. And so, I mean, talk to somebody who is a real professional in their aspect. We have our guided lanes in real estate.
No, it's very, very, very true. Okay. Next up, you're going to take on the number of home sales.
Yeah, so the home sales, last year we predicted that they were going to decrease slightly from inflated numbers in 2021, which we were actually correct.
We were pretty spot on there.
We were spot on. So we saw a decrease of 12% total on the north and northwest side, but that includes the downtown market.
Okay.
So the downtown market, if you want to do that, was a negative 2%. So we actually saw more transactions downtown.
So downtown
versus the other neighborhoods.
But also we have to kind of clarify.
Yeah, versus the year before.
Downtown got a little bit more.
But 2021 was the rough year for the River North condos.
Yeah, we saw downtown got a little bit more of the backlash from COVID.
Yeah, so they're kind of like catching up, which is kind of nice.
Okay, that's good to note.
And then our urban markets,
the urban neighborhoods,
went down 14%.
Okay,
so a little bit more than the average, but. Still,
and really, I mean, a lot of that came back to the fact that we were predicting it because 2021 was a very strong year.
totally.
Right? We had gotten past the initial shock of COVID. We were still dealing with a lot of that. People had a lot of pressure on changing their living environment for a multitude of reasons. And money was very, very cheap.
Yep.
So, that's a lot of what came behind why we thought that was going to happen. From that perspective. Okay, I'll take this one. Nice. This is an interesting one, and I think it all kind of leads together. We typically grade ourselves on what's going to happen to the days on market. Days on market, just to explain, are how many days a home is on the market prior to accepting a contract, on average. What would you say if somebody were going to ask you it's a loaded question. What would you say a normal time on market is for a normal market, if there is ever such a thing?
So normal markets, I would say let's go pre-pandemic, right?
Okay.
So pre-pandemic, I would say, they were, I think it was 90 days average on market.
Yep.
So I would say it's probably around there.
Okay. So in 2021, and hold on, I'm going to pull this out so that I actually get this right. We had the days on market was about, if I remember correctly, about 58. I could be a little bit off in that, but it was around 60, just under 60 days in market.
Totally.
That number dropped a lot last year. We saw the reduction overall drop 35%.
Wow.
That's a big cut. The north side without downtown markets actually was 38%. The downtown market was 36%. Now the reason that was 100%. If you go up a few more, we said that our inventory dropped 27%.
Yeah.
Right. We had less homes, but we didn't have that many less buyers. We know we had some less buyers, we had less sales, but when the amount of inventory performs at a lower rate than the amount of sales, and there is a smaller portion of that, we know days on market, the market gets more competitive. And that's absolutely what we saw. So that we saw that the average days on market, depending on where you were and those types of things, was in the mid to high 30s for certain. And that's one of those things that we expect when the market gets faster. There's less inventory, there's less supply, more demand, quicker turnaround.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Here's the tough one, and another one that I think we did not score our highest on. Consumer confidence.
Well, I think consumer confidence actually started. So our prediction was that consumer confidence would continue to improve. I think it was improving at the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, we had a lot of things that came up in our world that changed our situations. And so I think that's also that affected it. I mean, stock prices went down significantly this year. A lot of people lost equity or that. Inflation has been going up. So we keep on talking about how people had a lot of savings during that 2020, 2021, and that those savings are starting to decrease.
Yeah.
I was listening to CNBC, and they were talking about how, I think it was Bank of America or Capital One was talking about the credit cards and how the credit cards have started to increase on the amount of credit cards more. Yeah. That's an so instead of using their savings, they're using their credit cards. But the debt to income ratios, the debt to the actual limits, are actually better than they were pre-pandemic. So It's interesting. So I think the consumer is strong. I think right now the market is just so, which way are we going to go?
No, and I agree with you 100%. So to measure this, we actually tap into the consumer confidence index.
Totally.
The consumer confidence index was down 18%. But I think you're right. We came into this year that there was a lot of optimism. A lot of that conversation was related to COVID and where we were at as a country in handling that. And that part of the impact on the market has gotten to a much better spot. And we talked about it, I think, in last month's podcast. The United States is really managing that at a better realm than some of the other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Especially how it's impacting the economy and how it's impacting the consumer confidence. Once again, we had things happen elsewhere that had major impact. Yeah. And it started with the war. And then obviously the war put a lot of pressure on inflation. The inflation put pressure on the interest rates because the government had to get involved to try and curb things. And so now it's this unknown that we've seen is that the rapid rise of the interest rates, the fear of a recession, which we talked about, I think, in episode 2. People are terrified of a recession, but recessions aren't scary things. I mean, they can be. I shouldn't say that wrong. they can be when they spiral out of control. But in theory, they help keep our markets balanced, right? We talked about that before. So we've got fears of recession, fears of, what's going to happen in the housing market, the media that we're dealing with, higher interest rates, inflation, all of this stuff. This is kind of what tailspun out of the war overseas, inflation and those types of things, which that once again, we were incorrect. The part that we were really looking at saying, hey, if we can get this COVID conversation under control, we're going to be on more stable footing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, just in general, our economy is doing really, really well. We're up like 3.4% in GDP even this quarter. It's like they're tracking it. And I mean, it's just such a kind of toss up right now, unfortunately. It's hard to predict. And I mean, next year when we are trying to predict for what's going to happen, unfortunately, this is the hardest year to predict because nobody knows.
You're very, very right in the sense that what we have learned over the last 10, 20 years is that there will always be
something.
Sucker punches, as they call them. There was always going to be something that jumps out of the woodwork that we said, whoa, we didn't think we were going to deal with that. I mean, in 2020, none of us thought we were going to be dealing with a worldwide pandemic that was going to shut down our economy. And then we were going to live in a sci-fi thriller for the next 3 years. But, there's always going to be something. And those things, that's, I think, where our experience comes in, right? Because if we look at our personal numbers as a team and the success of our clients, we've still had the ability to navigate these waters and to kind of, flow in the direction of the curveball as we go through it.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, now we get to the tricky part, right? We put ourselves on the table. We took the beating. We graded ourselves. Now we're going to project. Okay.
Predict or project?
Both.
I was like, wait.
We're going to project our predictions.
Oh, God.
Okay, and to be totally transparent, Samuel and I haven't talked too much about this. I mean, granted, we talk about the markets in general and this and that, but we didn't sit down to talk too much. So you're going to hear really kind of on both of our fronts, our overall thought processes and kind of where it's coming from. First and foremost, home values, prices.
All right. So, I mean, I've talked about this at length. I think home prices are going to probably stay steady. The big thing is, again, when it comes back to the supply and demand issue, I think they're going to kind of even keel each other out, which will keep prices about the same. But again, I think it also comes back to where we are in the market. We're a seasonal city. And so I think the first half of the year is going to be really competitive. I think the prices are going to probably go up a little bit. And then I think they'll maintain at the end, which is essentially what we've seen the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, a ton of great points on that. I think you talked about with regards to the market and the beginning of the market. I think one of the things that us and a lot of our other top agents that we're constantly chatting with are really talking about when the market's going to start and the momentum of it. And I think the resounding group has said, the market's going to start fast. It has the last couple of years, right? Yep. We're not starting in February, kind of gaining speed later on. We're really planning to have a pretty quick start a couple weeks into January. So I think we're going to start fast. I think, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think we're going to see some inventory stuff and that the market's going to be strong. So I'm going to actually agree with you on this. I think that obviously, again, it depends on what it is, downtown, single family on the Northwest side or anything like that. True. But I think at the end of the year, when we sit here and we take a look at things, I think our home prices are going to be relatively stable. I don't think we're going to necessarily lose value. I don't think we're necessarily going to gain a lot. I think that we're going to stabilize it. And I think that that's going to be a little bit of a win in comparison to what we see in a lot of the other parts of the country.
Totally.
So we're going on the record, right?
We're going on the positive record.
We're going to go, well,
or neutral.
We're not saying, we're going neutral. We feel like Chicago's in a good balanced position to take on some market adversity.
Yep.
And to be in a position where at the end of the year, we're going to see that those numbers are going to fluctuate throughout the year. But at the end of the year, we think we're going to be at a very stable point.
Totally. I think the conversation that a lot of people are going to have is the realistic pricing strategies, though. I know like in previous years, like we always have those sellers who are like overinflating, but I think a lot of people are going to now have better conversations with their clients.
Yes.
Which predicting Obviously, that means we're going to hopefully have less price reductions this year, which I think we saw this year was a lot of people got overzealous with their pricing, thinking that the market was still going up, and then realized, hey, I wasn't priced appropriately to start with.
Yeah, especially, I mean, that was a lot of the second half of the year. The first half of the year, we used so much of the strategy of almost underpricing it. Let the market, we know we're going to be able to get a lot of people, and we know that there's desire for a property like you. Let's slightly be aggressive in what we do, and let's let the market bear what the market's going to bear, because we know that's how we sell for a premium.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Totally.
Inventory. I'll jump in on this one, right? I put you on the chopping block first. Inventory overall, I think that we are going to see. I think this is going to be a little deceiving, so I'm going to clarify it first.
This year is the hardest year to predict.
We were wrong in this last year by a landslide. I think overall, this is a tough one. I think overall we're going to have a slight amount more homes on the market in comparison to last year. Okay. I still think we're going to be undersupplied in the big picture of looking at previous years. But if I'm comparing year over year to last year, I think that we're going to see a slight increase.
Like in the amount of homes that are coming on the market for sale.
The amount of homes available to buyers to be bought, I'm going to project that there's going to be a slight increase over last year, and partly just because last year was such a decimated year in terms of inventory. And what we're seeing here is that, yes, I still think it's going to be a competitive market. I don't think we're going to have a lot of inventory, but I think it's going to be slightly more if I kind of look at some of the market conditions and those types of things, which also, we'll talk a little bit about the days on market with that. But my prediction is that we're going to see inventory inch up by the time we average out at the end of the year.
I haven't even thought about this. Honestly, it's so.
I told you
it's like such a hard thing to predict, because I think, like what we talked about, even like in our normal podcast, people have such great interest rates that I think it's going to be hard for them to let it go. Yep. And so that I think is going to be an issue. And I also think like new construction is going to be down. So I just think it's going to be a little bit tighter. So I'm probably going to be a little bit more negative on this, where I'm probably going to say it's going to probably be flatlined with where it was this year.
So you're going to think we're going to need negative. And a little bit just in terms of my thought process is I actually think, I still think we're going to have some of the issues related to the war overseas and the labor and the
totally.
But I also, from what I've been talking to in terms of some of our contractors and our developers, is that the prices of a lot of that stuff have started to stabilize. So I do think that if they can pick up some land at not premium pricing, I do think we're going to see the new construction start to inch up as well, which, as we know, if new construction goes up, everything below it should see it as well. And that's where I'm going to give it a little bit more confidence. So Samuel thinks it's going to stabilize. I think it's going to tick up a little bit. I don't know how we conceptualize that, but we're going to put it somewhere in there.
We'll see.
Okay. Oh, this to me, this next one is way more challenging than the inventory. Interest rates. What do you think is going to happen with interest rates? Everybody is dying to know.
All right. So, I think interest rates are going to probably stabilize at this point. I mean, I don't think they're...
So let me ask, in terms of stabilize, you think that they're going to be the exact same at the end of next year as they are now?
I think they're going to probably be close. Okay. I think what we're going to see is they typically go down at the beginning of the year. That's like how it normally happens. And I think it's going to stabilize out right there. So I have no idea. Let's just face it. This is going to be a crapshoot. I mean, the Federal Reserve keeps on talking about increasing, but we're also seeing softening in the overall market. Yep. So I think everyone's talking about a soft landing and how that could potentially be happening. And we're starting to see a lot of the metrics we were very nervous about that. And so there's been this kind of, are we going to have a hard landing where we're going to over tighten and go into a recession, or can we have a soft landing and have a really easy market? I think that's going to have a lot to do with the interest rates, though. So it's one of those predictors. It's going to be like consumer confidence. It could go either way, unfortunately, this year.
So I'm, all of the economists that I've been following and we kind of listen to, and as you and I both always say, right? We are educated by people that this is all they do, right? Yes. We are smart enough to listen to really, really smart people. Yeah. And then we digest that information and we put it into our own markets. And even think about how we've been advising, right? We think about all these mortgage products and stuff like that. Our mindset is that the the reason why we're doing these 2-1 buy downs and those types of things is because somewhere in a 12, 18, 24 months, that's when we're expecting
they'll start to go down.
The softening of the market. That's really been our projection, especially when we tie in the fact that 2024, I can't believe I'm talking about 2024 already, but 2024 is going to be a presidential election year.
And election years are always the softest interest rates. But
So,
that's 2024.
and that's what I'm saying, but
that's not 2023
hey,
prediction.
I'm back-ending into my prediction here. Okay. So in my mind, the way that we've been advising is that a significant decrease in this year's interest rates are not something that I'm thinking is going to happen at all. I think we're in total agreement on that. The question is and I should even clarify, right? I don't ever think we're going to see a significant interest rate decrease because what we talked about is under 5%. That is adverse market conditions. That is world events going on that we are trying to grasp. Normal markets, we should be 5, 6, 7%. So when we talk about kind of softenings and stuff like that, I'm not talking about where we were. I'm talking about where we're going to hopefully stabilize. So my thought process is that stabilization is going to happen a little bit more into 2024. I think this year, what's going to be interesting with interest rates is I think it's going to feel very erratic. As I think that there's going to be more of what we've seen where it's like maybe not as severe, but I think we're going to go up, and then I think we're going to go down, and then I think we're going to go up, and then I think we're going to go down, and I think it's going to feel like a little bit of a roller coaster ride. But I think I'm in agreement with you that by the end of the year that we should be at a fairly similar spot to where we're starting. Still a little bit elevated from where we want to be, but not. But I think it's going to be a bumpy road between here and there.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to predict, unfortunately. In previous
where's
years,
that crystal ball again?
In previous years, we've been able to predict it. I mean, again, pandemic, we were always like, it's going to raise.
Yep.
But we were never like, it's going to raise significantly like we saw this last year. It was always like, it's going to raise like 0.5% or, something like that. And so I feel like this year it kind of threw a wrench in. And so now I feel like we're just going with the punches, knowing that the long-term goal is that it's going to be fine.
No, I think that's a great way of putting it, is that we know enough of the economic factors that impact the interest rate. And usually they're fairly subtle. This year awoke in our awareness to something very, very different. And now I think that's why we're both a little gun shy to say, whoa, what's happening next? Just because of what we've gone through. But we also know, right, we're very understanding that the issues that were at hand last year are still very alive right now. And we're still dealing with those, and those are still going to be part of our discussions.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, so interest rates, a little bit of a wild ride, but probably ending pretty close to where we're starting.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, hopefully this one's a little easier.
Total home sales.
Actually, no, I think we're on... Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so the total amount of properties that are sold.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I feel pretty confident in this. I think this number is going to go down. I made this prediction in our last podcast.
Totally.
Is that we, have kind of talked about inventory softening a little bit. We've had a lot of people that have moved locations, changed home environments in the last couple of years. So with inventory coming down, demand coming down, I think the number of sales at the end of the year is going to come down. And I don't think that should be a shock for people at all. That's where, once again, we talk about the media and how they're going to perceive that.
They'll spin it.
Right? Just because the number of transactions goes down has nothing to do with valuations. But I think the actual number of transactions that go in comparison to last year, I think we're going to see that a little bit lower.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a decrease in the amount of sold transactions.
For certain.
We've had such a busy 2 years that everyone moves every 5 to 7 years. You can't expect every year to be up.
Yeah, for certain. And there's a lot of different aspects that go into that in terms of the inventory and the demand and all those pieces. But overall, I think the general consensus is that the number of sales when we're sitting here a year from now is that they're going to be down.
Totally.
Okay, here's hopefully, in my opinion, another easier one. Total days on market. The amount of time our sellers' homes are sitting on the market.
All right, let me dissect this first.
I can jump in if you want.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay.
Because I need to figure out how I'm going to portray this.
So my thoughts in terms of days on market is that I think that this is a little bit a part of the normalizing of the market. I think our market's going to breathe a little bit better this year. I think the days on market is going to go up. I don't know if I'd say significantly, but I think enough. I think that statistic is going to be a little skewed in the beginning of the year. I think that in the beginning of the year, the days on market's going to be lower. But I think as we get to the end of the year and we look back on how the whole year went, is that I think that whole continuation of normalization, despite adverse conditions, is going to bring us back to a point where we're normalizing the days on market. The days in the markets in the 30s is not normal for us. That is a little too aggressive. That's a little bit too much. So I'm saying that number is going to grow. It's going to go up a little bit more, and it's going to balance our market.
I agree with you. Now that, I would agree with you 100%. I think the beginning of the year is going to be where we may see it be a little bit more faster paced.
Yep.
But again, it also is going to have to go with the conversations that people are going to have with I think buyers now with the interest rates are going to be a little bit more cost conscious. So if you overprice a property, I think that still is going to be in effect. But I'm hoping people have better conversations with their sellers now. But
we even saw that last year though, right? I will go on record to say that spring market 2022 was one of the most hectic times I've been in this market.
Yeah.
And even during that time,
we had 2 or 3 properties where we told the sellers to list it at one point and they tried to list it above and it sat.
It sat. And that's where I say is, and I think part of it's a little bit of a Midwest thing, is that people are very price driven and value conscious.
Totally.
And that I think that those that overprice paid the price for it. And that's why so many of our clients did so well and sold for absolute premiums, because they used the market strategy of possibly undercutting the market, gaining all the interest. So I agree with you. I think that those that priced too high definitely were the ones that kind of pushed on the negative side of the days on market this year. And I think that we're going to see a similar aspect as we get into this next year.
Yep. But yeah, I think towards the end, I think it'll start to increase days on market.
Okay, now this is a tough one to talk to, obviously.
I reject this question. I just flat out reject it.
Everyone hears it now. Samuel is going on strike for the question.
Consumer confidence is like one of those hard ones to like strategically predict, especially for this next year, just given there's so many positive things that are happening in our economy, but there's so much negative talk. And talk, unfortunately, outweighs positive.
It's true.
Like everything. I mean, unfortunately. And so I think that's going to be the big thing. I think I wish I could be one of those people that like bliss in ignorance, like the people who like don't actually watch the news or listen to anything.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you didn't watch the news, you would have no idea that the economy is like, that people are like so negative about the economy, because literally we are in the best moment in our, like in generations. Yeah. Of an economy. And unfortunately, I think it's getting skewed. So I think for that reason, it's very hard to predict. But
so if you have to predict, what are you going to say?
I will say consumer confidence is probably going to go down. The reason is because of the possibility of a looming recession. And it's not even going to be a drastic recession. It's not going to be anything that's like over the top like we've seen in the past. I think it's going to be a shallow one. And I think that's going to kind of hinder, and especially with the negative talk, I think between those two things, I think we can talk ourselves into a recession almost.
For certain. I mean, it's why
it's hard.
We talk about the media so much. And once again, it's an institution that we have a ton of respect for. But they have a huge influence. And remember, I said it, I think, on episode 2, is that the media is really good at their jobs because they're selling ad space.
Totally.
They're capturing interest, they're capturing viewers, and they're using emotion to do it. And emotion and where people's mindset is so tied to where consumer confidence is, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's different metrics. We talk about inflation, we talk about the prices, we talk about interest rates, we talk about what's happening with the stock market. All these things go into it. Now, my spin on it, my question, so to say, of where I'm trying to digest it is to say, in my mindset, consumer confidence down almost 20% this year. We know why that's happening, right? We know exactly why. We've talked about it. We've talked about the media. We've talked about the recession concerns and all that.
Everything.
If I'm going to ask myself the question, and the economists that I listen to, where consumer confidence will be in conjunction to where it is today, That's where I might say is I already feel like we know at the end of 2021 it wasn't high. It was better, but it wasn't high.
So you're probably predicting that it's going to maintain.
I'm thinking that it's going to see a slight decrease from now. Okay. I don't think it's going to be.
I don't think it's going to be drastic either.
I think that when I relate it to where we were at coming into this year and where we're at today, I think that we might see a slight decrease. But I mean, like you said, this one's it's a little bit of a Hail Mary, right? I'm throwing it out there. There's a lot of things as we've learned that could impact that.
Yeah.
But I think overall we're saying that it could be down a little bit more, nothing drastic. That we know that we're in a little bit of a down point now, and we know that we have a lot of things coming at us. I'm just hopeful that as we get to there, we'll be navigating. And the other thing to think about is we're going to start having some very serious talks about the election. That's the other question mark too. Yeah.
Don't get us started.
We've done this for a lot of presidential election years, so we'll dive into that there. But okay, so let's recap this. Let's see if we remember everything that we're predicting.
Okay.
We think home prices are going to stabilize.
Yep.
Relatively similar over the
last.
Stay
about the same.
A year from now, we're going to be about the same. Inventory, I think we both agreed that it's going to kind of
teeter-totter
a little bit. Overall, up a little bit from the market lows that what we saw, but that overall that you thought it was going to kind of be a little bit more the same. I think it's going to grow a little bit. Interest rates, it's going to be a roller coaster until we get there, but by the time we get there, we're strapping. Buckle up, people. It's going to be a ride. Yeah. But by the time we get there, we think that we're going to be at a pretty similar spot to where we're at. Number of transactions we totally agreed on. Those are going to be down. Number of home sales are going to be down. Days on market should be up. In theory, they should be up. Consumer confidence, we have no idea, but overall, maybe a slight decrease from where we're at.
Yeah.
Did I hit that all right?
You hit it all.
Okay. Well, you're going to have to tune in a year from now to see how we did. I think we did okay despite the conditions on everything that we've been talking about. Yeah. We're excited for next year.
I'm pumped about next year.
The thing that I always,
I think if we bring it in with the positive information and the positive energy, I think we'll do well.
Well, the one thing that we noticed in years, right? And we've talked about it a lot. Next year is going to have certain challenges to it. It's not going to be it's going to be what we consider a little bit more difficult year.
Yep.
But the thing that we get excited about is that during these times that the market gets a little bit more challenging and more difficult, people actually are way more critical of their agents and who they work with. They look for people that can help them navigate those more difficult times. And we are up to here in a little bit of a who even knows what we call this market. And so it's what I like about when the market gets a little bit more challenging is that we have more value to people. Right? Yeah. They are absolutely
they come to us more as well. That's the other thing.
Because
you can ride a smooth ride, but if you want information, then you finally come to us.
Yeah, and I think when the tides turn and things get a little bit more challenging, we have more value to people. We can add more insight. We can help people be a little bit more successful despite adverse conditions, and that's one of the things that we really enjoy and we really thrive in. Yeah. So I think we did okay.
I think we did great.
Here's to 2023.
Cheers to 2023. Right. Big gulp.
Right. I feel like we need something to cheers on that. So I think that's a wrap for our bonus edition of the Chicago Home Partner Podcast.
Yes.
Until next time, Chicago.
Till next time, Chicago.